welcome back to another installment of Van Life with Andrew and Yelena. Today we will talk about some cons or challenges of van life. Yes, it is not all insta glam and glory. There are bad days. There are things that aren't always fun to do. There are the van life chores, so on and so forth. So we will dive into them now. You have to park somewhere, and if you're working, you also need internet. Sometimes those two things don't agree with one another. Sometimes you can have the coolest spot, but
often it comes without cell reception.
Yeah, they didn't put a cell phone tower there for some reason.
Yeah.
So
especially when you're around the national parks. So if you're planning to go to national parks or out in the middle of nowhere, a lot of time there's not cell signal. Sometimes there are. I mean, we're at a really cool spot right now that's absolutely gorgeous, and we have full bars LTE. So it doesn't always collide, but it can. And if you're working on the road, you kind of have to plan sometimes. You have to look at reviews of the spot that you're thinking about going to and see if anyone's talked about whether or not there's good cell signal, and then almost leave. Like, you need to get there early to check it out, make sure that there is cell signal, and if there's not, be able to go to your plan B or C or whatever that may be. But sometimes you can't find a spot that's super beautiful that has good cell signal, and you kind of are forced into, maybe going into a city and city camping or something like that, which city camping often turns into Walmart parking lot. Not bashing it. We've stayed in Walmart parking lots plenty of times, and sometimes it's really great because when you need to pull off the freeway after a long trip, when you're just transiting, it's a good stop. But
so there's gives and takes on parking spots, and they're not always the Insta shots that you see. Those are those days where you have nothing else to do, no worries in the world, or maybe no real job that you're committed to, and maybe you're making money off content. We've not figured that out. But you get the really cool shot and then put it on there and everyone loves it. But yeah, that's not every day.
Find free water. Sometimes that can be a bit stressful. Not every place is providing just a spigot for you to get free water. So that can be somewhat of a con, is finding free water. There are places that it's been really easy, and then there's times that it's been somewhat of a stressful situation for us. But just comes with van life.
Places to park. I mean, on the west, it's really easy. There's BLM, Bureau of Land Management. Land, that's where we are right now. You can park there for 14 days usually, and so you don't have to worry about moving or whether or not you can be there. It's clearly posted, you can be there. But then, you're doing a transit drive, and then you pass through a city that is trying to get rid of homeless people, and apparently van life people fall into that category. So Walmarts pretty much universally allow parking in them, but some Karens in the city decide we don't want van lifers or homeless people, whatever, so then they make it so the Walmart doesn't let you park there. And so sometimes you're transiting through and you can't park there, and that's really annoying. So sometimes it's hard to find parking, sometimes it's hard to find water. California, very hard to find water. Kind of obvious why, I guess, but everywhere else is pretty easy to find water, and it's not too big of a deal. But it is just one of those things that can cause stress or anxiety on a day-to-day basis. In van life, it's just one of those things you have to worry about. You're not connected to the grid. There isn't water just constantly pumped into your van, so you have to go find it for yourself, and you have to find that parking space. And I'm a rule follower and a paranoid person, so I don't want to get a knock on the van. So I probably stress out more than my wife or some of our friends, because they don't care about it as much. It doesn't bother them, but it bothers me. So depending on what kind of person you are, may affect some, or create some of the challenges you may have in van life as well.
I think another thing of van life that is sometimes stressful is you are living, it's pretty obvious, you are living in a small space, and if you're doing it with your spouse, sometimes you don't have a whole lot of space to just get your alone time and decompress, and especially if you don't totally agree on something, there's not a whole lot of space that you can go to just get some space. So that can definitely be a factor, but it's one of those things where you just gotta learn how to get the space when you need it.
Definitely builds a relationship, because I'm constantly trying to run away from her and there's nowhere to go. So, yeah. So yeah, you have to work through your problems. There's no running away from them. And it can be challenging to decompress at times. But, well, we're still here and surviving. So I'd say it has made our marriage stronger.
Surviving. We're happily married. Thank you very much.
What she said. Some of the challenges of van life is just the small space. So we mentioned can't escape from your spouse to decompress, but we've got a big dog, and sometimes he doesn't quite understand the concept of get out of your way, and he just wants to be glued to you, and there's not that much space to actually maneuver sometimes. And so that can be a bit frustrating, because you're tripping over a spouse or tripping over a dog or both or whatever, and you sometimes you just feel trapped. I guess that would be the con. Sometimes you feel trapped. Like if you're laying in the back bed over here, you can't get to the door over there because there's dogs and humans in your way. But it's one of those things that it's just part of van life. You just have to deal with it. Work on systems and ways of communicating to get around it. I mean, it just is what it is.
It gets better with van life, with being in van life, though. Like,
yeah, you just have
kind
to
of
acclimate.
develop a rhythm and a fluidity, especially like with your partner, to like get around the van with each other. So, yeah. I mean, the obvious con of van life, I think, is it's a smaller space.
I don't know what your plan is for dishes at your current home, but in van life, you are always doing dishes.
After every meal, you're doing dishes.
Just always doing dishes. I mean, having a tea, now you got to do a dish. There's no dishwasher. There's no counter space to pile your dishes on.
Right.
Well, especially if you want the Instagram shots. I mean, again, those shots aren't showing reality. There's piles of crap everywhere that's moved out of the way. And, even if you did have the counter space to pile dishes, you don't have enough dishes to just keep using, because there's nowhere to store all the dishes. Because remember, you have to drive down the road, and this stuff can't just be flying all over the place. So you have a very limited number of dishes, so you're washing dishes just so you can have a dish. I mean, I don't know how often I find myself having to wash a spoon just so I can eat something, because we only have 4 spoons,
Yeah.
Or a mug or whatever. So, it's a small con, but sometimes it's annoying having to always do the dishes.
Yeah. I think another challenge to van life, I think that's more of a pet peeve for me than my husband, is it's really hard to recycle. There's a lot of plastics that we get from the grocery store, and I would love to recycle them. I want to do the best thing that I can for our planet, and plastic, I don't want that in our landfills, because it's never really going to go away. It's going to be here long after we're gone. But it's easy. Well, it's not super easy, but sometimes it's pretty easy to find a place for us to throw out our trash, but it's really difficult, near impossible a lot of the time, to find a place to recycle. And that's just unfortunate, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad she threw me under the bus there. It's not like I'm opposed to recycling, but I'm pragmatic, and just you don't have space in the van, so like honestly, you're not trying to turn into a rolling garbage can waiting to find a place to recycle. So it can be challenging trying to do your part to preserve the environment and the world that we have. So it'd be really nice if, everyone prioritized recycling a little bit more, or we stop using plastics and make things more biodegradable, which is why we focus on using our reusable containers, and we don't buy plastic water bottles. We use our Hydro Flask or our Yeti or whatever.
Right.
And you just try not. Honestly, if I could just buy things from the grocery store that didn't need things to be recycled, that would be my first choice, because it's so hard to find recycling. And I just don't want to have to worry about it. Like, she'll rinse these things out, collect them in the sink, then they pile up in the front, and then we're driving around these things for a week or two at a time, tripping over them constantly because, we're trying to recycle. And so sometimes it can just be a really big pain to do what's right for the world that we live in.
Yeah. I think another headache of van life, but just one of the realities, well, if you have a composting toilet, we can't really speak to anything other than composting. Your pee jug gets filled up probably every day to every 2 days.
If you're hydrated.
If you're hydrated. Stay hydrated, folks. And so you have to pour it out. I mean, it's just the thing that you gotta do. It's not pretty. It's somewhat uncomfortable sometimes, but you gotta empty the pee jug daily to every other day.
Yeah, especially if you're staying hydrated. So, not recommending dehydrating yourself, but it does make the pee jug go a little bit further.
So, give and take.
But yeah, it is awkward at times. For me, it was the first few months of van life and sneaking around trying to dump your pee jug out is kind of uncomfortable and weird. But you get used to it after a while, and people pee in the woods, dumping your pee jug in the woods. It's the same thing. So, whatever. It's all water. I mean, it's just water anyway. So it really isn't a big deal. That's what I tell myself.
I think a non-obvious one, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but at the same time not, is, you're moving away from your friends and family. So you kind of get to see your old friends and family less. But at the same time, we've kind of had the inverse effect of being able to make it out to see friends and be with them for a while and family more in van life. So it really, I don't know, that one's kind of a give and take, I think, for us. Like, we do get to see some people less, but we get to see more people.
That doesn't make any sense, but
we get to see more people in van life and for longer sometimes. So, but then to that end, also it can get expensive getting home for holidays. If you're you don't want to, if you're out on the West Coast and you're from the East Coast, you don't want to either blitz across the country with your van, or you got to get a plane ticket and things like that. So holidays can be somewhat expensive, or getting out to family on certain things can be expensive.
Yeah, like for us, we got a dog, right? So like, we can't just park our van somewhere and fly to go see family. I mean, I guess you can fly a dog, but it can be pretty challenging. I don't have that all worked out, and he would not fly well.
Not our dog.
But, it's miles on the van. Fuel costs are really expensive right now.
Speaking of our dog.
And, you can't just, I don't know, you're limited in your decisions sometimes. So there's always a give and take.
So I think that wraps up our cons of van life, at least from our opinion. If you want to see our video about the benefits that we think come from van life, some obvious, some not so obvious, we'll put the video above for you to take a look at. Thanks for watching. I hope it helped you. If you like this content, click subscribe, give us a like. It helps us out. And hope to see you soon.